My name is Mariana Viesca. I'm a corporate sustainability senior advisor in MSG. And I want to share with you some of the success stories that we have had with PaPM. This tool that Jedris was just sharing with us. I want to share with you not only the two cases that we have successfully implemented in Spain, but I also want to share with you some of the aspects that we have identified in different companies. Firstly, I want to introduce a little bit of MSG. So MSG is a company that was established in 1980. We have around 10,000 partners around the globe within 29 countries. And over 1.1 billion revenue in 2021. And just to give you some context, so we are the principal partner of SAP in sustainability projects. And we are also a developer of SAP solutions. So I want to get into the topic, but firstly, just to mention some of the benefits that we have found in PaPM sustainability. And I want to present to you some of the main challenges that we have identified in all of the clients. So this is just to give you a little bit of context. No, this is where we usually start in our sustainability projects. And these challenges are almost, if not in all of the cases, repeatedly identified. And this is why I wanted to mention this before I show you how that was solved into specific cases. So these challenges, for example, mainly focus in the data gathering and harmonization. As we have identified, most of the companies have different facilities and different places, and the information needs to be gathered and centralized in only one place. And now doing that sounds easy, but when you're managing the information in sustainability in, for example, Excel tools or different spreadsheets, well, it might get a little bit complicated around that, along the way to gather all that information. And also sometimes, and what we have found is that not only is the information a little bit different, sometimes the format changes, sometimes the data sources are very different, so the information changes, and that makes it very difficult for the sustainability managers to handle all that information and exactly calculate the information to report it in an efficient and easy way. Now, another challenge that we have found in most of our clients is, for example, the orchestration, traceability, and auditability. As we know, right now, it's not mandatory in all the initiatives to audit your information, but it will be in the future. And having that traceability of where that information came from, who was the manager or the owner of that information, and where that specific data was taken from, it's very important for sustainability team members, and it's very difficult right now to trace back where that one specific number came from. So this is a challenge, and also in terms of orchestration, it's very difficult to handle different, for example, sites. If your company has presence in different countries, sometimes handling the information of when are we getting this information, how are we going to receive it, etc., might be a difficult challenge for most of you. Now, another issue that we have encountered is most of the companies right now want to set ambitious targets, in sustainability, and knowing how to get to those targets might be difficult, not only because right now you have the picture, but you don't know what type of initiatives can take you closer to those targets, and also taking into account the growth of the business might be difficult. It could imply some calculations, and doing that, it's a lot of effort for most of the companies. And another challenge is what my colleagues have been mentioned, that we will have so many initiatives and so many regulations coming our way in terms of sustainability, and giving response to those regulations and initiatives might be a challenge for you, not only because it is a lot of information that needs to be handled, but also because there is different ways of handling that information. And sometimes even the regulations or the initiatives ask for the exact same information in different formats, different units. So that is another challenge that usually companies face. Now, what are the benefits of PaPM, this tool that Beatrice was just showing us? Well, we help you solve these issues and challenges that you are facing. In the case of data gathering and harmonization, what we do is we centralize all the information in one specific place. So yeah, sorry for that. So we centralize all the information in one solution. Everything is handled there. So you just have to go there and find the information that you need. And also the homologation. What we have found is, for example, when you have different departments, sometimes the type of information is handled in a different way. Even the names of companies is handled in a different way. So having one tool where you can centralize and do the harmonization of that information is a benefit for most of the companies. And this is managed, as Beatrice was mentioning, through mapping. What we do is in the tool, we establish some mapping in which we say what specific information is used in each department and how that can be translated for the rest of the departments. In terms of orchestration, traceability, and auditability, the tool helps you to achieve complete traceability. You know specifically where that information comes from, how that information was transformed throughout the project, and it helps you to identify specifically where maybe some of the, errors or challenges were identified. Now, in terms of orchestration, it also helps to facilitate this, not only because you can identify different data owners, but you can also identify some people that are going to be in charge of the review and that can do these quality controls throughout the process. And also you can identify the data owners and notify for internal and external auditing. Now, in terms of simulations and projections, just as you just mentioned, we have some specific ways of creating these simulations based on your needs. So each parameter can be adapted to your needs so that you can identify which are the, for example, initiatives that will take you closer to your targets. And you can also introduce that calculation in the tool so that you can always have a control of the performance that you have as of now and where that performance is in terms of your targets in the future. Now, in terms of response to different types of initiatives and regulations, also the tool transforms the information so that you don't have to do it individually and put a lot of effort in transforming that information to give response to different initiatives. It is all handled within the tool. And finally, before we go to these two success stories, I just want to explain, so what is the approach we usually have in the projects? First, what we do is try to identify where do you have the information. So where specifically do you have the environmental information, the social information, the governance information? We review what are the type of data sources that you are using. So for example, maybe you have all your information in Excel files, but maybe you have some information in some SAP applications, for example, in Ariba, in Concur, in SuccessFactors. So we can identify what type of information you have there so that we can automate the extraction of that information to be used for the sustainability calculation. Now, after we identify where you have their information and what are the data sources that you have, we integrate that information into the tool so that it's processed in a way that we can calculate your environmental performance, your social and governance performance, and you can give response to all these different initiatives. You can also use the tool to evaluate and monitor how your performance is being handled. As my colleagues were mentioning, you can take a picture at any time of the year so that you can manage sustainability, not only report it, but also manage it in a constant way. And yes, as mentioned, you can establish sustainability targets, do the simulation and forecasting, do the reporting and the integration of business processes within the tool. Now, let's jump into the success stories. What I want to give you is first just an introduction to the company so that you understand a little bit the context of each of the companies that I want to present. And then, yes, I will show you some of the pain points that they had and how PaPM helped them solve it. So The first success story is the ship manufacturer is Navantia. It is a Spanish state-owned shipbuilding company. They design and construct high technology military and civilian vessels. The sector is a discrete manufacturing. Some of the activities they have is the shipbuilding, turbine manufacturing, green energy, and the company is quite big. They have over 3,000 employees. They have 4 companies in Spain, but then they have different international locations, and they have within Spain, for example, 6 shipyards. And why I mention this, because each of those locations give different type of information, and everything is centralized within the tool. Now they have presence in over 20 countries, and the main objectives they had and sustainability needs they had was to achieve a centralized solution in which they could gather all the information, manage it, and give response to the different initiatives. As you can see, they have some specific objectives. One of the main ones is fighting climate change, and they do this through the management of the GHG emissions. And they want to give response to different standards. Some examples are the ISO 14001, ISO 14064, as we know, the carbon footprint. And then they also want to give response to the NFRD, the EFRA, etc. Now, these reporting needs, of course, are aligned with the GRI and the ESRS. And the scopes within the carbon footprint that as of now, they have introduced in the tool is a scope 1 and 2, but they have plans to introduce a scope 3 in the near future. Now, let's focus on the pain points. So their main pain point, was that they have these multiple locations, and they had to gather the information from these multiple locations, not only for environment, which is what they previously did, but also for social and governance. So they wanted to gather all that information in one tool. Now, they had different sustainability parameters and requirements per department. And what I mean by that is, for example, the levels of granularity that they have changed depending on the department. For social, they wanted to see the information based on their companies. For environment, they wanted to see the information even to the lowest level by shipyard. So they wanted to understand the whole picture in terms of environment KPIs. And this was one of their pain points because previously they couldn't see that specific picture in terms of the lowest level of granularity. And also they wanted to understand what was happening in the multiple production plants. They had multiple source systems. What we did with them was go one KPI per KPI and understand specifically where they were getting the information from. And they didn't have much automation. They had, for example, a lot of SAP tools, but they weren't connected with those tools. What they did is they requested the information they needed for the sustainability reports. And the person, for example, in HR just went into the SAP tool, downloaded the table and sent it to the sustainability department. Of course, that meant a lot of time and effort in handling all that information. They had different applicable sustainability standards that they wanted to give response to, and they had a lot of complexity in data gathering. Now, some of the benefits of PaPM not only did we solve these issues and pain points that we just mentioned, but we did bring some additional benefits to their sustainability management. When they started the project, they wanted to see how could they increase the automation, because when we started, we identified that most of the information was coming from Excel. But as mentioned, what we did was, okay, yes, this information is coming from an Excel, but where is that information coming from? What is the main source? And then when we identified that they had it in their system, what we did is jump the step of the Excel gathering, and we jumped directly into the tool. So we connected the information and absorbed it directly from the SAP solution. Another benefit of PaPM is that we centralize all the information in just one solution, so they didn't have to have plenty of files individual to handle this information. And we also supported them to give response to the different ESG reporting standards that they are aligned with, and they usually give response. Now, Another important benefit of PaPM within this company was that we offered an end-to-end traceability. So before, they didn't understand, or they didn't quite know where that information was coming from. And now with PaPM, they can just trace back some of the steps and identify specifically where that information is coming from. And with that, they can give response to the different needs that are coming from the auditors. In the case of Spain, the NFRD, for example, it is audited and needs to be audited and verified in order for it to be presented. So this was the case of the Spanish shipbuilder company. Now, the second success story that I want to share with you, it's a little bit different, but it has some of the similar pain points. This was a sanitary ware manufacturer. What they do is then they design, produce, and market products for bathroom spaces, and they have over 100 years of history. The activities is a production and sales of solution covering all the needs of bathroom spaces. They have over 20,000 employees around the world. They have a big number of companies, over 50 companies. In terms of locations, they have over 100 sites, over 70 plants, and as mentioned, over 50 companies. And then they have presence in around 170 countries. So you can understand that the complexity they had in handling the information coming from sustainability was pretty high. They have really ambitious objectives in terms of decarbonization, for example, and also sustainability, circularity, everything you can think of, they are doing it. So it's a very ambitious company that is doing a lot of things in terms of sustainability. They are complying with different standards such as ISO 14001, SBTI, Global Compact, the NFRD, the GHG protocol, etc. And their main reporting needs for this project, the starting project, was to give response to the NFRD in Spain in a more automated way and through a one only tool. And then also to start implementing the scope 3 calculations. And yeah, the scopes that were included in the project was scope 1, scope 2, and now in the future, well, near future, scope 3. Now, in terms of their main pain points, so again, the levels of granularity was very important for them because they have, yes, 50 companies, but they also wanted to have a specific picture for the different sites that they have around the world. And as mentioned, they have a lot. So what they wanted is to have a way in which they could monitor the performance of, for example, their environmental KPIs. And they wanted to have a specific picture. They wanted to have our overall picture in terms of the global performance of the company, but then they also wanted to go detail by detail. So they jump into, in terms of company, how the environmental KPIs are performing, and then into a little bit more detail now in terms of sites, how each site is performing in each environmental KPI. And this is a lot of information that we needed to handle within the tool. And this was very complex for them, and previously they didn't have these individual pictures, and now they do within the tool. Now, they also had different data sources, and they had a lot of complexity in handling the information and also integrating the information. Not all the plants had SAP, so we had some plants that had some information in their systems, but others didn't. So we had to do a mix of different data sources for the beginning of this project. And also they had lower harmonization and lower identification. In the case, what we found is that, for example, in the social department, they were talking about some company codes, and then in the environmental department, they were talking about other company codes. And we had to establish an individual or a specific language so that each of them knew what they were talking about, but everything was handled within one tool and one specific company code. So we had to do a lot of mapping within there. And then also they were missing some errors that were within the data, but when we started to integrate the information in PaPM, sorry, we were able to identify those errors. So this was a very important benefit. And also the scope 3 was very challenging for them. And now we're starting to identify how we can automate that process too. As mentioned, one of the benefits was the automation of the data collection, the improvement of the quality of the data. We identified that they were missing some numbers, and we were able to identify those numbers and add them. And also they requested us to have some monitoring reports for each of the departments, because each of them wanted to measure different ways their KPIs. So we created individual, for example, reports for each of the departments. The calculations in PaPM without manual interaction, that was one of the highlights to the end-to-end data processing automation, and also the harmonization, the traceability and auditability of the report. The qualitative report is not only better managed in terms of sustainability, but also they now do it in less time. And yes, we have helped them identify what are the main data sources for scope 3, and we are also helping them identify how we can automate those data sources. So as mentioned, these were very complex and challenging projects, but we can see the advantages of them using PaPM to manage sustainability. And yeah, this is very enriching for us. So yeah, I don't know if you have any questions.